If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben, and this is Syya, and I got a question for you. Are you being complacent, or are you just content? And you need to know the difference. Everybody is allowed to be content. Everybody is allowed to sit there and say, you know what? I've got enough. I've made my $1 million, my $500,000, my $10,000. I've got 1,000 followers, $5,000, 10,000. I've met my goal. This was the realistic goal that I've created for myself. This to me is a win. This to me is the great. I'm content. I don't need to strive anymore because I've reached that goal. It's time to create something else. Or are we just being complacent and sitting there going, you know what? If I do anything more, I might be risking it. I might be risking it all if I do more. And we need to realize, are we afraid to move forward, or have we succeeded at our goal and it's time to create a new one? So, Syya, let's gnaw on this.
Look, my friend, the first cut is the deepest. I'm just kidding. No, I was actually thinking of that because there's a fine line between pleasure and pain, right? That's yet another
Absolutely.
song reference. I'm just on a roll today, my friend. When you think about complacency, oftentimes it's rooted in a bit of fear of the alternative, right? I'm pretty good. I'm okay. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing. Because if you think about is the grass greener on the other side? Now, being, comfortable with what you have and in appreciation and in gratitude, that's contentment, right? That's where you're like, look, do I have to work, 90 hours work weeks and power through and lose relationships and lose who yourself is and lose life, work balance, soul, whatever, because that's a goal that you want? And is that really true contentment? That's not for me to say. It's for you to say. So I'm right there with you. I do think complacency is often rooted in fear. I think contentment is rooted in gratitude.
Well, I mean, the majority of the work that we do is in change management. It's how do we get people from where they are to where they aspire to be? And the biggest thing that is the X factor is human beings. It's not the processes. It's not the procedure. It's not the strategy. It's not even the tactics that are created. It's the people along the way that are sitting there going, what's this going to do to my job? What's this going to do to the company? What is this going to do to the day-to-day thing that I've gotten very comfortable doing? What about, I don't understand what's coming up. I don't agree with what's coming up, whether they understand it or not. And they don't buy into what the future is. Because if they haven't bought in to what the promised land is, what's on the other side of the hill, and what going to the other side of the hill is going to be beneficial to them, they're not going to go there. Mostly because they're complacent. They realize that the software they're using is buggy, it's frustrating, it's non-efficient, but I know how to use it. And I know the workarounds. And, I can justify the extra 3 hours a week where it's just sitting there debugging. I can't do anything with it. I'm just going to go for coffee. And you know what? We look at our lives that way, where we sit there and go, okay, better the devil I know, and let's live with it, and let's live through a little bit of pain than worry about, could changing affect me personally? Could I lose my job? Could I lose my status? Could I lose the relationships that I have because my team is going to change? I'm going to go from being a part of this team to a completely different team. I'm going to go from being in this office to a completely different office. I went from having an office to being out in, some type of a shared desk situation. people are afraid of the unknown. And when people don't understand the unknown, and people don't understand why moving from the known to the unknown is going to be beneficial for them and how and why, they're going to remain complacent. And as long as people remain complacent, 70% of change management initiatives fail.
I could have told you that just living in any corporate environment, my friend, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's really interesting is because, oh, well, why fix something that isn't broken, right? It's kind of like saying, like, yeah, you've got a tire, but it's low. It's not flat, but it's a little low, right? And so, yeah, it's still doing its job. It's still going to do what it's going to do, but now your tread is going to be sucked down real faster, right? Because it's just so much more friction against the ground. Maybe you might be a little bit, I don't know, bouncy.
Your gas mileage isn't as good as good.
Yeah, the gas mileage isn't where it used to be, but hey, still moving, still working.
Mm-hmm.
That's complacency. Do you think complacency, and I'm going to be controversial, and everyone in the comment, you tell me, do you think complacency is not just fear, but laziness? Do you think we can admit to ourselves that we like the status quo as is on a lot of things? Because I don't want to learn something new. Come on, Ben, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. The system ain't the worst, but I got to learn a new system. I ain't no spring chicken. Like, really? Do we really want that? So
absolutely. There is always a factor of laziness, the factor of I'm good at what I do. I know the process. I know the procedure. I know how to do this. I'm an expert at this. I don't want to look like an idiot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to have to start from scratch again. I don't want to have to go back to class and learn something new. I don't want to have to sit there and have some young 20-year-old explain to me how to do my job. It's so much easier just to stay where we are.
Yeah.
It's so much better for me to be where we are. And I don't want to go through the headaches and hassles. People quit over this.
Yeah.
People quit because it's easier to quit and go find another job than it is to go through a change process where all of a sudden they're going to be in a position where they may not look as smart as the facade that they put up. It's swimming and the tide goes out and finding out that everybody's naked. And all of a sudden you realize that there's a lot of people out there who have been really inefficient and have been hiding behind a poorly designed system because it makes them look good. And all of a sudden, you make a better system, the tide goes out, and those people are sitting there buck naked. And you're sitting there going, okay, why do we have these people around? Because look how inefficient they are with this new system. Nobody wants that.
No. I mean, and this is why and where you see a lot of what was once innovative companies fall behind and fall by the wayside, because I think they were resting on the laurels of their past performance, of the fact that they were first to market. First to market's great. That just gives you a sprint start. But if you can't sustain it in the long term, first to market means absolutely nothing if you are not constantly in a state of innovation or in a state of, pivot.
Well, there's always somebody that's going to be nipping at your heels. There's always some new young buck company that is sitting there going, yeah, well, they did that 10 years ago. Yeah, they were first to market 10 years ago, but wait a second, I've got GUIs now. I've got better technology. We're in a SaaS-based environment. I can create stuff that's head and shoulders above where these people were 10 years ago when they were first to market. And unless you as a company are willing to constantly sit there going, if I don't innovate, those guys are going to gain ground and they're going to surpass me. They are.
Okay. So let me re-swizzle this here a little bit here. Do you think possibly,
yes,
to use a business term, the hurdle rate to actually affect change, to go with that decision, is easily overcomable? What if it's like so damn painful? Like, let's say, for example, and not to pick on Polaroid, but let's pick on Polaroid, right? The tide changed towards digital versus analog versus whatever Polaroids are, whatever that thing is. Outside of the nostalgic factor, they could not and they had a difficult time, staying with the times to be innovative with that. And it was decided at some point that they're like, no, we're going to lean in and we're going to be vintage or whatever. And it just turned out to be the wrong decision. Same thing with Blockbuster, for example, right?
Well, Blockbuster, Kodak, Fuji, the list goes on about these companies that were giants. They were absolute giants. And now nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, who says the name BlackBerry anymore?
I know.
Who says? I mean, I loved my BlackBerry. You were gonna pry my BlackBerry out of my cold dead hand, and then all of a sudden they sat there and said, "We've got the best out there. We've got the market leader. We don't need to change for anyone. The world is going to chase us forever, and therefore we can just rest on our laurels." And all of a sudden, Android and Apple just left them in the dust.
Yep.
And
Yep.
And that's reality is the fact that if we're not, as organizations, if we're complacent as organizations, if we are complacent and we are sitting there going, good enough is good enough, somebody else is out there sitting there going, good enough is not good enough. I can do better. Hang on a second. What if we took this, this, and this, added this? Now we have a game changer. Yeah, it's not brand new. It's not life changing, but all of a sudden we just added 3 different features out there that all of a sudden took good to great, and then all of a sudden the conversation completely changes.
The underpinnings of this conversation, not for this convo, but seriously, that complacent discussion really goes down from a technology perspective. AI, like I know that would be a future convo for us, but the idea of automating tasks. I'm not talking about the cyber, whatever. I'm talking about AI from an automation perspective. Mm-hmm. That to me is something where no company can afford to be content and complacent anymore. So that's my final thoughts on this convo, my friend.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think to sum this thing up, to move this thing forward, is that we as people, as organizations, as corporations, as governments, as associations, whatever, need to sit there and say, are we complacent or are we content? Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be completely and absolutely honest with ourselves. Have we reached our goal and it's time for a new goal? Or are we just burying our head in the sand, saying that if we ignore this, maybe it'll go away? Because guess what? It's not going away.
No.
It's not going to go away. And we need to sit there and think about that and sit there and say the world is going to continue to change. The world is going to continue to evolve. People are going to innovate. I think the game-changing, disruptive, technology where it's just all of a sudden, where did that come from out of nowhere? Are those things? There's not going to be a lot of those in the world, but there's going to be a lot of things where people sit there and say, you know what? That toaster? What if we did this with the toaster? Oh my God, I can make a vertical pizza. It takes up less space. It's not going to make a mess, and it's going to be perfect every time. And it only cost me $39.95 for one of these things. Yeah, I'm in. And we need to be worried about that. And those technology changes may or may not come from our industry. Look at the insurance industry. The insurance industry is being disrupted all over the place by non-insurance companies. And we need to sit there and say, it may not come from our backyard. It may not even come from around the corner. It may come from halfway around the world. And we need to be cognizant that the world's going to continue to change. And if we want to remain to be relevant, we need to be willing, able, and have a desire to change with it. So I'm Ben.
And I'm Syya.
And we'll see you soon.
Hey, hey, hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not On This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me at brilliantbeammedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Not On This, Business Bites.